I had a dream several nights ago that myself and several others were trying to fit inside this old truck. It was my grandfather, his brother, so my great uncle, my wife, and one of my cousins. Both my wife and my cousin were very pregnant, like 8 months or something. We all had to pee, but there wasn't a bathroom where we were. My great uncle had an old single cab truck, the kind that holds like 3 adults, maybe even cram 4 in there if everyone forgets the whole safety of seatbelts. Anyway, in the dream, all 5 of us were going to fit somehow. And we were going to cram in, and my great uncle was going to drive us to the bathroom. We started getting in, but once my wife and cousin got in, my daughter and her cousin, my niece, suddenly were there, and they got in as well. They're both very young children, 3 and 5 years old. And with them in there wasn't enough space for me and my grandfather. There was only space for one more adult. The dream ended with me thinking that I should let my grandfather go, but also wondering how I was going to be able to pee because I needed to very badly. In this dream, there are several symbols going on here. My daughter and niece, both 3 and 5, they're young. The pregnancies, this represents like new life that God's given, and He's still birthing more. Yet these blessings filled the old truck so that it did not have enough room. We all need to pee, which represents eliminating waste, whether in the sense of cleansing away bad stuff or in some sense of getting rid of like byproducts or anything that's not useful to make way for what you need. So it's kind of like a processing of less relevant things to sort of eliminate them. The lack of capacity in the truck hindered our ability to take part in this cleansing or processing. Thus, to describe the situation a different way, the old vehicle, whatever that might symbolically represent, being driven, doesn't have enough room for the new life God is bringing about. If I try to use that vehicle it will hinder my ability to eliminate waste and process out things which are no longer useful or relevant to the current or future situations. This will likely result in an embarrassing accident, like metaphorically wetting my pants, or a UTI, whatever that might mean, metaphorically. Neither of which are desirable options. So in the dream, there are 2 needs. The first is for a place of cleansing. The second is a new vehicle. A vehicle represents the abilities, talents, organizations, etc. that get us places. They're the things that carry us through life, that take us places. Vehicles can also represent how God carries us. In this dream, though, I'm trying to use a carrier that is old and insufficient in carrying everyone that needs to be carried. The weird thing about the dream was that my grandfather didn't have a face. I only ever saw the back of his head. This signals to me that he actually represents Father God in this dream. This dream means the dream is saying that while the vehicle in question might hold me and the new things God is bringing about, it cannot hold both me, these new things, and God. The result will be either me trying to take the gifts without the giver, or me being left behind while God is going to accomplish, His new thing without me. Based on the events of my waking life, I interpret the need to pee as the need to process disappointment. As I try to follow God's leading, when things don't go my way, then it goes I expect. How will I process disappointment? The old familiar vehicle, if you will, of how I handled this is typically like what happens is I become deflated, I become discouraged, I entertain thoughts of, am I good enough? Do I not have what it takes? Inadequacy. I become overwhelmed, having had to face my own lack of control over life, and subsequently I start to spiral into what I call a I can't storm. So I can't this, I can't that, I can't handle this, I just can't even, that kind of thing. Which gets very specific. It's always like, I can't administrate, I can't strategize, I can't do this, I can't, it's very specific. It's not just I can't even, but anyway, I get into that situation, and then what ends up happening is it eventually leads to complete decision paralysis. I can't pick out what I want for dinner. I can't decide where I want to sit. It is what it is. This cycle doesn't get me anywhere, but instead leaves me stopped up with a full bladder, if you will. Worst of all, it creates distance between me and God as I question whether I'm too inept to hear Him or He's not as good as I expected. I need a new vehicle. I need a new way of processing disappointment. This, however, is not the first vehicle dream that I've had. In a previous vehicle dream recently, I had to return a car I had borrowed and return a rental car, both of which were usable, but I couldn't use them anymore. Instead, I walked with my grandfather, who in that dream also represented Abba. Abba walked with me. The message of that dream was that walking with God would be my vehicle in life. I would get places in life by walking with him, by keeping my relationship with him. And he would carry me through life with his very presence. So when I wonder what the new vehicle I need to process feelings of disappointment is, I already have my answer. Instead of walking off by myself to ponder what went wrong, or to go over the situation, or rehearse the discussion and think about what I said and what I should have said and what I could have said and how I wish things had gone. Instead of that, or even speaking to a friend and talking about all these things to a friend and sort of venting, low-key venting about my disappointment. Instead of doing all of that, what I need to do is turn to Abba and yet still walk with him. Even when life doesn't seem to meet my expectations, the ultimate gift God gives is himself. And that's a gift that doesn't disappoint. Paul speaks of this at the end of Romans 9. He says, those who pursued a law of righteousness did not attain righteousness because they did not pursue it in faith, but as if they could earn it through works. Thus, they were offended by Jesus. Nevertheless, those who trust in him will not be disappointed. When I pursue success and recognition, or when I evaluate myself or others based on situational or circumstantial goodness or results, the perceived outcomes, I often get offended. And more often than I'd like to admit, I often get offended with God. But if regardless of my perception of reality, I trust God, I will never be put to shame or disappointed. So I want to encourage both myself and anyone else watching this to just trust God. Turn to him even in moments of disappointment, because he is so, so good. And he gives his very self, his own presence to be with you no matter what. Thanks. Blessings.